Okay. Okay, Jai Baba, everyone. So good to see all of you again. As you know, today our guest speaker is Ursula Reinhart from California. Ursula and I go back a long way. We met back in the 60s when I was just a little preteen, and she and her husband, then husband Mik Hamilton, had come. They had trekked all across Europe and the Middle East in search of spiritual knowledge, and finally got to meet Baba as a result in 1966. They had many wonderful, well, wonderful and ups and downs, adventures, if you will. But I'll let Ursula elaborate on all of that. And so without further ado, welcome, Ursula. And it's so good to see you again after so long.
Yes.
So go ahead, take over.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
I don't know much about Zooming. I don't much sort of care about Zooming, actually, because I don't have an audience that I can see and that, talks back to me. I prefer to actually have an audience, but such it goes. Yeah, I am. And
Ursula, do you have a gallery feature on your device? If you hit that, you'll see all the faces on your screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you? Okay. So
right.
we're about 20, almost 30 of us here.
Oh,
so
good.
So go ahead.
Well, hopefully there are some that haven't heard my story. I've told my story many, many times, and I'm happy that there must be some at least that haven't heard it. Well, where to start? I was born in Germany, and in post-war Germany. Well, actually, I was born during the war, still in Germany. And when I grew up, religion was something that was very peculiar in my family because my father's family were Catholics. My mother was Protestant. And she had my sister and I baptized Protestant because my father was away for the war. And when the family got all back together, my grandparents thought we were heathen children. And they used to refer to us as the heathen children because they were Catholics and we were Protestant. So this was a huge scene in my family, and there were fights over it, that even as a small child, I understood that it had something to do with money, that if we weren't heathens, then my parents would inherit money when my grandparents died. So they took us, my sister and I, down to the church and made us Catholics, so in order to save the heathen children and the inheritance. And I was 5 years old, and I remember thinking, this is total nonsense. I'm absolutely the same. Nothing has changed. All of a sudden, I'm okay. So now Jesus likes me or something. So anyway, I did not have much interest in spirituality after that. And I grew up in Frankfurt, and as it was sort of common in the 60s, in the early 60s, one was into jazz and into smoking marijuana and such things. So I did that along with my friends. And once, and I sort of realized that I could actually make some money by selling marijuana to American soldiers that were stationed there, because we were in the occupied part of Germany. And by doing that, I met an American soldier named Mik Hamilton, who I sold some marijuana to. So this is how we first met. And the long story short, I was eventually arrested for selling marijuana, but there was not much of a punishment because I was quite young. But still, I had to spend 2 weekends in jail, but I had a police record because of it. So Mik eventually was thrown out of the military also for marijuana, and was sent back to the United States. And so I was in Germany and he was in America. And we wanted to get together, but the Americans would not give me a permission to go to the United States because I had a drug record in Germany. So eventually I got enough money together with Mik and to bring him back to Europe. And he came back to Germany and we got married in Frankfurt. And then we knew a Persian man who was a rug dealer. He had a carpet shop in Frankfurt. And what he did is he drove old Mercedes cars to Iran and bought carpets and brought them back. And he is only allowed to import one Mercedes a year. So he put one in my name and one in Mik's name. And a friend of ours came along, a friend of Mik's came along, and we drove these Mercedeses to Tehran for our Persian friend. And he gave us money. When we got to Tehran, he gave us $200. And that was our pay for doing that. And we decided that instead of going back to Germany, we are going to continue and see what the world is like. And so after spending some time in Tehran with Ibrahim's family, we decided to hitchhike east, and we went on to Pakistan and to Afghanistan and to India. And what we most like to do, I guess, is smoke pot or hashish. And that was kind of our thing. There was this thing called the hippie trail, that hippies from Europe traveled across, and all were interested in smoking dope mostly. And so we went on and we stayed in Nepal for a while, and from Nepal we decided we wanted to go to Japan and then go to the United States from Japan. So we knew that American servicemen, American soldiers, were always a good customers for these things. So we brought with us from Nepal 5 pounds of marijuana and hashish that we took with us across all these borders, from Nepal to India to Burma to Thailand and on, and eventually to Japan, to sell to American soldiers, which we did. And when we got to Japan, it was kind of interesting because we had no fear, apparently, of border crossings, because a lot of these countries would have been very serious if they had arrested us, but it didn't seem to concern us that much. So when we got to Japan, we went by ship from Hong Kong, and we asked the purser if we could spend the day on the night on the ship and leave the next morning, because we wanted to hitchhike to Tokyo from Kobe. And he said, okay. And so when we got off the ship just to kind of look around a bit, and our luggage and everything was still on the ship, we noticed that the customs were they were looking through people's bags and opening people's suitcases and things like that. And the next morning, when we left the ship with our 5 pound bag of stuff, the customs was closed because there was no ship had arrived, and so they closed. So we just walked into Japan. And this sort of thing happened a lot to us, where we were, despite ourselves, just completely innocently going along, and lucky, I guess is what one could call it. So in Japan, we went to the American consulate to try to get a visa for myself. And they once again refused, because they said I needed to have the police record from my hometown, and I knew my police record had when I had been arrested for marijuana in Frankfurt, and so they would not give me a visa. So here we were in Japan, and we wanted to go to the United States, but we couldn't. So we decided, well, let's just go back to India. And so we turned around and we went by boat. Well, we wanted to go as far as Saigon, and from Saigon, we were going to actually go up the Mekong into Vientiane, and we were sort of not really aware of how much of a war was actually going on. So when we got to Saigon, it was impossible to go and continue. But before that, when in Hong Kong, we started to smoke heroin, and that was quite common. That's what the Chinese did. Nobody stuck it in a needle and injected it. People smoked it, and it was pure heroin. And we sort of got into liking that, and we grew quite fond of that. And we carried that with us. And when we got to Singapore, we heard that there was a German, an Austrian friend of mine that I knew from Paris in Singapore. She was staying at the Sikh temple. So we went to the Sikh temple to meet with her. And she came out to have tea with us at a chaiwala. And she brought this fellow with her, an American. And we filled our pipes with whatever it was and passed it around. And he said, "No, thank you." And that was strange to us. But he said, "I'm trying not to take drugs." And to us, that was really unusual. I mean, trying not to take drugs. I had never heard that before. Either you do or you don't, but try not to. So we asked him why, and he said he was on his way to India to see his master, Meher Baba, and Meher Baba didn't like drugs, and so he's trying not to take drugs. And that was interesting to us. We said, "Well, have you ever been to India?" No, we had not. And we said, "Look, there's so many Babas in India. If this Baba doesn't like for you to take drugs, just find yourself another Baba, because, I mean, there are plenty of Babas that we had been sitting along the Ganges when on our way, when we were in India before, with the sadhus and the orange robed guys that all like to smoke chillums and like to smoke dope. And so to us, a Baba who doesn't want that, well, then, find another Baba. But Steve Simon was his name. He didn't seem to want to do that. He liked his Baba, and he had to go there by November. And this was a Sahavas that Baba had announced November of 1965. And some of you may know that Robert Dreyfus was the other one from the West that went to this Sahavas. And Baba had canceled it, but neither Steve nor Robert had known that it was canceled. And Steve needed to be there at a particular day in Bombay, but he had no more money. He was out of money. So for some reason, we paid his way from Singapore to Bombay on a ship. It was like $75 or something. They're very, very inexpensive ships. They were not cruise ships. They were just, transport ships. And we gave him the money to go to India and to see his Baba. And then we stayed in Singapore, we stayed in Colombo, in Ceylon, and eventually we took a ship from Ceylon to Bombay. And we arrived in Bombay on the 31st of December, 1965, and it was New Year. It was going to be a new year, and we thought we should maybe stop taking drugs, because by now we had really gotten heavily into this heroin smoking, and I mean we were pretty much not in good shape. So we decided maybe we should go to India, get the new year, and stop taking drugs. So we got off the ship and we went into Bombay, and there was a fountain, a sandstone, round sandstone fountain that was dry, had no water in it, but it had kind of levels, several levels. And we sat at the bottom level of this fountain, and the guy next to us was filling a chillum with hashish, and he passed it on to us. And so our New Year's resolution actually did not last until midnight. And so we at this point, we really were aimless. And so we sat in this fountain with these people for a couple of weeks and just living there, sleeping there, and with our sleeping bags. And it was beginning to be obvious that we were really kind of just wandering aimlessly, lost around. So one day, one of our friends in the fountain said, why don't you go to Hyderabad? So he was a Muslim, and he said, it's a nice place, go to Hyderabad. We said, oh, great, yes. You think we should? Absolutely. All right. We suddenly had a purpose. We're now going to Hyderabad. So we packed our sleeping bag up in our bag, and we stuck our thumb out, and we hitchhiked off, and we ended up in Pune the first day. And the next day, we stayed in Pune overnight, and the next day we hitchhiked on to we were going to hitchhike on to Hyderabad. And so the guy picked us up and he said, why do you want to go to Hyderabad? We said, oh, we don't know. Why not? And he said, go back to Bombay. We said, oh, you think so? We turned around and we hitchhiked back to Bombay. We were that lost. But in the meanwhile, what had happened is when we were in Pune, we remembered that this is where Steve Simon's barber lived. And so we said, hey, let's go see this guy. So we asked someone at the hotel, where's this Mayor Barber live? And they said, oh, he lives on Bunt Garden Road, and just go and put us in a rickshaw, told the rickshaw guy the address, and they took us to Guru Prasad on Bunt Garden Road. And we knew our barbers. I mean, they were like orange-robed, matted hair guys sitting on the Ganges smoking chillums. This was a palace. And I was like, what? This is where this guy lives? This is amazing. Wow. And so we walked in the garden, and this guy came up and we said, excuse us, are you Mr. Baba? And he said, no, I'm just the gardener. And he said, Mayor Baba is not here now. He only comes here during the summer months. And but if you want to get in touch with him, go to the Baba Center in Pune. And so he put us in a rickshaw and gave the rickshaw driver the address of the Baba Center. And we went there and we walked into the Pune Baba Center. And that's the first time that we saw an image of Baba. There was a painting at the front of the meeting hall with steps going up to the painting, and he had long hair, and we were just shocked looking at that. Mik said, he shaves. I mean, he didn't have a beard. He's a sadhu, and He's a barber and he shaves. And I said, but look at that nose. So that was our impression of Baba. And then a man came in, it was Ramakrishnan, and he introduced himself and he said, if you want to meet Mayor Baba, he's not seeing anyone. He's in very strict seclusion. And if you want to see him, I will send a message and come back in 2 or 3 days to see what the answer of the message is. We said, okay, you do that. And we decided that, well, we're just going to leave Pune, go back to Bombay and back to our fountain. And we never went back to see the answer of the message that the fellow had sent to Baba. And so we sat in the fountain for a bit longer, and then we decided that maybe we should go to Delhi. So we went on and we hitchhiked. The first truck that picked us up was not going to even toward Delhi, was going in a different direction, but it was evening and seemed like a nice truck, so we went there. And to make a long story short, we got lost in Rajasthan, in the Rajasthani desert. And we were really out of it. We were taking a lot of drugs and we had no more aim in life or anything. Go to Delhi, go to Hyderabad, it didn't matter where. And somebody picked us up and he was going to a temple, a Krishna temple in Rajasthan. And there was some festival at the Krishna temple. He said, would you like to come? I said, yes. Oh, meanwhile, what I forgot to say is that, first of all, Mik was wearing orange robes himself all the time. He had the kind of guru thing going for himself. And he had long hair and a beard. And people thought that he was a guru and I was his one disciple, actually, is what people thought. And he had been reading, somebody gave him a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and he was reading the Bhagavad Gita a lot, even from Japan on. Somewhere, I don't remember where it was given to him, but he had been reading the Bhagavad Gita. I was not interested. We spoke German to each other. Mik spoke perfect German, and I did not speak English very well at all. And so him reading this, whatever he was reading, was no concern of mine, actually. But he was reading the Bhagavad Gita. And so when this guy said to go to the temple, that Mik wanted to come along. And we got out of the guy's Jeep and Mik walked into the temple in his orange robes, walked into the temple with the man. And I was kind of on my way, and these women came running up, said, no, you cannot go in there. You're not allowed to go in there. So I said, okay, I'll just wait. And then Mik came back out, and what had happened is that they asked him if he was a Hindu. And he obviously wasn't, and he was obviously a Westerner, and they threw him out of the temple. They asked him to leave. You cannot be here. And this upset him a great deal. This actually upset him because he had been reading about Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, and he wanted to go into this Krishna temple, and they threw him out. So after that, we took a train to Delhi because we were just so kind of out of it. And when we got to Delhi, we stayed in a hotel, and the hotels we stayed in, sounds fancy, but they were like a few rupees a night, maybe $1 or $2 a night. Very, very inexpensive places where we stayed. And excuse me. And so at some point in Delhi, Mik said, I want to go see this Mayor Baba. And I said, what? Are you kidding me? That's 800 miles the other way. And Deccan Plateau, that area is now, we're not fond of that part of India. It was not our favorite part of India. I said, oh, come on. If you want to have a guru, let's go to Rishikesh and find a guru. In fact, I looked into it a little bit and I found a place in Bengal where you can learn how to levitate in 6 weeks. And I thought that sounded really cool. Let's go do that. And Mik said, no, I want to go see this Meher Baba. So this is his thing now. And well, if you think so, go ahead. And so all we knew is that he was in Ahmednagar. So we wrote a telegram to him addressed Meher Baba, Ahmednagar, Maharashtra, and we asked if we could come to see him. And 2 days later, the cable came back and Baba said, do not come to Ahmednagar. If you remember me wholeheartedly, you will feel my presence wherever you are. My love, blessings to you, Meher Baba. And he also gave us the name of Mr. Kane, was Deo Kane, a man, a Baba lover in Delhi. And Mik was so excited that he had written back to us, even though he said, no, don't come. Mik was very excited. And to me, this was really, I don't mean to sound like I didn't care, but it was not my thing. It was Mik's thing. And whatever made him happy, fine, good, great. So Baba said, don't come, but go see this Mr. Kane. And we went to see Mr. Kane, and he gave us a copy of God Speaks and 2 individual discourses, a discourse on the Avatar and a discourse on the God-man or something like that. I don't remember. They were individual pamphlets of individual discourses. And he said, what you should do is write to him and tell him about yourself. And so Mik, I mean, it was, the letters were considered but they were written by Mik. And the only thing we knew about this guy was that he didn't like drugs. So we told him that we were in India and I was from Germany, he was from America, and we take drugs. And he wrote back and he said, stop taking drugs immediately and go home. And that was kind of a shock to our system. But for whatever reason, I don't know, but we stopped taking drugs that day. And we were into it. I mean, we had been at that point smoking heroin for months, and we never stopped long enough to see if we would get sick, because we just did that. But he said, stop taking drugs, and we stopped. But it had nothing to do with him. He got no credit for it or anything. It was so we remember in Bombay, we wanted to stop on the 1st of New Year. Well, this was our willpower suddenly. And so we stopped taking drugs. And for the time being, actually, even the desire was gone. It was very, very unusual. And so go home, that was not possible. So we wrote to him and we explained to him that I was German, Mik was American. I could not go to America because they refused me for my drug record. And I had received the letter from my sister that the police had come around again in Frankfurt, because after I was busted the last time, I continued to deal drugs, and they knew that. So they were sort of waiting for me to come back. And so going to Germany was not an option. Going to America was not an option. So we explained that to Baba. And we told him that we would like to go to America, but we can't. And he wrote back and he said, you try. And we went to the American embassy in New Delhi, and they forgot to ask me for my police record. And within 2 weeks, I had an immigration visa to the United States, which was unbelievable. I mean, unheard of that it would go that fast, and that they would not ask me for my police records, probably the most important piece of paper that they asked for. So now we could leave and go back to the West and go to America. Now this is exciting for us. So all this time when we wrote to him, we would ask him to see if we could see him. In fact, Mik got sort of argumentative. Mik in one letter said, I don't understand, you saw Steve Simon. Why don't you want to see us? We had heard from Steve Simon. We knew that Steve had met him. And so when we got the visa to go to America, we wrote to him, and that's the first time we did not ask him if we could come to see him. We just wrote him and said, we're leaving, we're going back to America, we're out of here. And then Adi sent us a letter and said, Meher Baba wants to see you for 5 minutes only on March 7th, 1966. And I remember thinking, oh my God, are you kidding? I was jazzed. I wanted to go to America. The idea of going 800 miles the other way back into the dust bowl of the Deccan, just, but Mik was so happy that made me happy. It meant so much to him, and he was so excited about us going to see him. So that's what we're going to do. And Adi gave us instructions what train to take from Delhi to Manmad and to Ahmednagar. But we were hitchhikers, so we hitchhiked all the way to the last stop before Ahmednagar, and then took the train that Adi was going to meet. And we got so the train arrived in Ahmednagar, and Adi was there, and we had just taken the train from Manmad. The whole night we were taking the train and everything. And Adi was all excited. He said, we gotta go. And because Baba said 9 o'clock, and he said, no, he didn't. And letter, you said 9:30. And he said, yes, but Baba changed it to 9. I said, well, what? Come on. We're supposed to be that 9:30. He changes it to 9. We don't even know. How do we know? We were never told he changed it to 9. So, but Adi was all excited. We have to go. So we got into the blue 47 Chevy. I don't know, some of you might have seen it. It sits there somewhere at the trust compound, I think. And Adi drove us out to Merazad. And it was Holi, the Indian festival where they throw red powder on each other. And I remember thinking, oh God, somebody's going to throw this paint on us, and then we're going to look all goofy. But mercifully, that didn't happen. So Adi rolled the window down and said, oh, I love this air of the country. And the dust was just pouring into the car. And we drove out to Merazad, and we pulled into the gate. The way you go now, that wasn't happening. There weren't all that area. You pulled into the main gate, and there was no porch. There was just Mandli Hall door and a wooden bench outside Mandli Hall door. And the building opposite was the one where Francis had his room. That was there, but there was no, what do you call that? The dispensary wasn't there. And so Adi said, you sit here and wait. And he went inside the door into Mandli Hall, and we sat there, waited, and Mik said, oh man, what are we going to do? We should have brought a coconut that we can, give him, it was like the coconut is a symbol of the mind that you can put at the feet of the master. I said, yeah, well, we don't have a coconut, sorry. And while we're sitting there thinking, what are we supposed to do? Talking, what are we going to do when we go in there? This old man with a beard and a cane came up, and he sat next to us, and he said, Amrika? He said, Amrika. And that was Baidul, the must hunter. And the only thing he wanted to know is where we were from, because he was always so nosy. And so we sat there, and then Adi came out, and he said, Baba does not want you to touch his feet or to bow down to him. He just wants you to come in and sit down. And so we went into the door, and Baba was sitting on the right in the chair. And the first thing we saw is he held his hands out and he went like this. So obviously he wanted to hug us, and he motioned. So Mik went and hugged him, and I went and hugged him, and then we sat opposite him, kind of under the clock there on the wall. And I noticed there were men, a circle of men sitting on the floor. And I remember, I don't know what I thought. I thought maybe we were going to be alone with him or something. It's like, who are all these people? It was sort of weird. But I noticed that one of them was a Westerner, and that was Francis, apparently. But once I turned around and looked at Baba, then I no longer ever looked at these men. And Baba started gesturing immediately, and Eric's voice came from the group of men where Eric sits. He was kind of sitting sort of where he sits, but I never turned to look at what he looked like. Baba was so fascinating to me, the way he looked, and just the whole thing was just amazing to me. So I never paid attention to these other men in the room. And Baba he was much smaller than I thought he was. That chair in Mondley Hall, it kind of almost came up around him. He was slight and small to me. And he didn't look well. The color of his face was not well. He looked pale, and he didn't, somehow he didn't look healthy, I thought. But his eyes were just amazing. He didn't look at anything for very long. They kind of darted around the room. He would look around the room and very fast, and everything was fast. And his hands hung off the edge of the chair, and when he was not speaking to Erich by making gestures, his hands would hang off the edge, and his fingers would make these circles, and he was just very interesting to me. He was sort of gesturing with his fingers. And the other thing that I noticed was he had unbelievably beautiful feet. They were on this cushion, and someone that age, who's walked all over India in these chapels and everything, was just amazing. He had beautiful feet. And he said, "How did you sleep last night?" And we said, "Oh, fine, Baba." Because, we didn't sleep at all. We did this train thing out of Manmad and everything. But, you can't complain. So we just said, "Oh, fine." And he said to Mik, "Are you, you're very thin. Are you okay?" And Mik said, "Yes, this is my normal weight." Mik was at that point very thin. And Baba said, "You should eat more chapatis," and he made this motion of how to make chapatis. Mik should eat more chapatis, he said. But something's happening with this computer. Is everything okay? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So he oh, I know. It's starting to rain. Wow, amazing. It's raining on my skylight here. So he, after how did we sleep, and is Mik well, and all of this kind of little sort of small talk, he then said, "Have you stopped taking drugs?" And it was really a heavy mood in the room, like, whoa. And we said, "Yes, Baba." And he smiled and he was happy. It had made him happy, apparently, that we obeyed him. And he smiled. And I mean, his smile was just unbelievable, just beamed. And he then said, "Who do you take me to be?" And he asked Mik first, and Mik said, "I take you to be the living Christ." And this totally blew my mind. He'd never told me that. So what? I didn't even understand what that meant, the living Christ. And how come he'd never told me that? But Mik had read God Speaks. You see, Mr. Kane had given us God Speaks, and Mik had read it. And he never shared with me what was in it, but it was obviously he had gleaned from it that Baba was the avatar. And then he looked at me and he said, "And you?" And I said, "I have no idea. I don't know." And so apparently he was satisfied with what Mik said. So he needed to explain to me who he was, because I told him I didn't know. And he said, "I'm God in human form. And I know this because I constantly experience it. Just like you know you're a woman, you never ask yourself, am I a woman or am I a man? Through constant experience, you know you're a woman. Like that, I know I'm God in human form." And when he said that, it was, to me, it was that was who he is. And there was no way I could doubt that or say, "Oh yeah, well, maybe he is, maybe he isn't." When God looks at you and says, "I'm God," there is no way that you can doubt that. And this so totally blew my mind that I'm sitting there suddenly in front of God in human form, that I didn't know what to do. So I started to cry. And that's all I could do is sit there and cry. I was shot for the rest of the meeting as far as I was concerned. This was way, way too much for me, you know. And so, but because it was holy, I was wearing a black sweater because I thought they were going to throw this red powder on us. And our backpack and all my stuff was outside. So I'm sitting there crying, and my nose is running. And there's this snot running out my nose, and I have to wipe this on my sleeve because I mean, that's all I could do. My nose is running. So it made these kind of silver streaks up down my black sleeves, my snot. So this was me in front of God in human form, snotting up my sleeve. And he asked us more things. He asked if we had children. And Mik and I had already decided that we had no interest in children, and we knew that we didn't want children. But in India or in Asia, people always ask about children. They don't usually ask about children. In most of those countries, they ask if you have a son. I mean, daughters are not that important. But do you have a son? And so my answer was always, I didn't want to say no to people because then they think you're weird. So I would always say later. Oh, I'm sorry. Eric, I'm doing this thing. So he asked if we wanted children. Mik said no. And I said later. And he said, "Who am I to please?" So I didn't know what to say. I mean, the whole thing was just amazing to me. And I said, I didn't say anything. Mik said something about that he should please himself. He said, "If you love Ushi, you're to tell me to please her. And if you love Mik, you're to tell me to please him." Somehow he understood that I wanted children and Mik didn't, which wasn't really actually. But so that was kind of an interesting little interchange. And then he asked if we had gone to, oh yeah, that's right, in Delhi. We went to Baba's birthday party. Mr. Kane had taken us to Baba's birthday party, which was that we saw actually moving film of him in the birthday party, you know, some footage of Baba. And
Uh-oh. Did we just lose her? What happened?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yep, apparently we lost her, but I bet she'll come back.
Yeah. Something happened there.
I think she's back.
Oh, okay, good.
You're on mute, Ursula.
I love her
am I
stories.
back?
Yeah, you're back, Ursula.
I'm back.
Yeah, hooray.
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, see, this is my work computer. For some reason, my own computer didn't, the camera didn't work. And this is my work computer, and sometimes it does that. So, but I'm okay. I'm back, huh? Hello?
Yes, you're back.
Yes, we hear you, Ushi. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Good. Yeah. So where was I? Yeah. So he asked if we had gone to his birthday party and what did we observe? And we said, well, it was all in Hindi. And it was interesting to us that the women sat on one side and the men on the other of the hall where the movie was shown. And he then said that we now how are we going to leave then? And because he asked us to go back, and he said he wants us to leave immediately. He does not want us to spend even the night with Adi in Ahmednagar. He wants us to go to Adi's office, and he wants us to go to immediately start going to America. And how will we be doing that? And we told him that we will be hitchhiking to Europe and then taking a plane to America from Europe. And he said what he wanted us to do is to go to the West and encourage young people from taking drugs, that stopping young people from taking drugs was the highest spiritual work to be done in the world today. And that was our job, I guess. And then he said we're to kiss him and leave. And Mik kissed him, and then I kissed him, and we left out. We walked out. And the thing that I remember the most about when kissing him was his smell. He smelled not like flowers or perfume at all, more like a newborn baby or a puppy or something that is absolutely new and clean and fresh. And a friend of mine once described it as innocent, the smell of innocence. It was just this unbelievable smell that he had. And we went, and Adi drove us to the office. Oh, when we went outside, this woman came up, and I'm still in tears. By the way, I was in tears the whole time. And this woman came up, and which I later knew was Dr. Goher, and she said, "Is there anything I could do for you?" And I was so rude. I said, "Just leave me alone." And well, you know, that was kind of dumb. If I had sidled up to Goher, maybe they would have taken me to meet Mera or something. But anyway, that didn't happen. So we went to Adi's office, and Baba sent a bicycle messenger to Adi's office and said, if we needed money, Adi is to give us money. And we did not need money because we had been very successful in Japan selling our wares. And so we said, no, thank you. But can you imagine? He asked us if we needed money, Adi's to give us money. Amazing. So he wanted us to leave India immediately. And this turned out to be almost impossible. It was unbelievable. There was a war between India and Pakistan. The border was closed. The war was over, and then the border was going to open for us to go, leave India. And we get to the border and we left India, but Pakistan would not let us in. They refused, so we had to go back to India. And then we had to fly to Kabul, but the flight is only once a week, and there was it was a DC-3 or something. It had 16 seats or something, very small propeller airplane. And we eventually flew from Amritsar, India, to Kabul, but flying over the Hindu Kush, the weather got bad and the plane dropped hundreds of feet, and we turned around and went back to Amritsar. And it took almost 3 weeks for us to get out of India, but eventually we did. And we went to, Baba said, when we go to New York, and we were in constant communication with him. We wrote letters to him, and every letter we wrote to him, he answered. I have, I don't know, dozens of letters from him over the years. It was just unbelievable, the amount of letters that, everything he answered. And we went to New York, and he wanted us to meet Fred and Ella Winterfeld and Robert Dreyfus, and which we did when we got to New York. And then we went to California. He wanted us to meet Phyllis Frederick, and we had some correspondence with him about helping for Mayhem Mount and Agnes Barron, and so that was sort of it. And then we did the drug work we settled in Santa Barbara. It's just people would come and stay with us and visit us, and we were like the holy rollers, telling everybody about Baba and the evil of drugs, and it was really amazing. Baba was absolutely on fire in those days, and that's kind of the story.
So Ushi, when was it that you came to Karachi and stayed with us? I'm a little lost in the time frame.
Yeah, so after we went to Santa Barbara and we stayed in Santa Barbara, Robert came out and visited us, and Mik and Robert decided that what we really should be doing, encouraging young people from taking drugs, is go back on the road and encourage those people on the road that are hitchhiking around, Turkey and Afghanistan and whatnot, and persuading them to stop taking drugs. Now, that's not what Baba had told us to do, but that is what somehow, well, not me, I didn't want to go, but Mik and Robert wanted to, and somehow, so they wrote to Baba, and I was dumb enough to sign the letter as well, and said, and explained to him that this is really what we want to do, is go back on the road and turn the poor people on the road off of drugs. And he wrote back and he said that he had no objection, but it was immaterial whether we did this or not. And had we known a little better, we probably would have understood that when he tells you to do something and then you tell him you actually want to do something else, then he doesn't disagree, but it's sort of lost its original thing. So Robert and Mik and I, and Mik's brother Tom in the beginning, and our dog, remember our dog? Yes.
Oh, yes. Remember Sita very well. Yes.
Yeah. Right. We sold everything. We gave up our place in Santa Barbara. We sold all our belongings, and we flew to Frankfurt, and we bought a VW bus, and we all piled into the VW bus, and we went on the road. And we were the holy rollers. We told everybody about the evils of drugs and the wonders of the avatar. And Baba said we could come back into India to see him again after November of 1967. And we said, oh, great. Well, we start traveling in the end of 66, and it'll take us that long to get to India. Well, a month later, we were in Karachi, and Baba said, we cannot go into India until November, and it's January. And so we ended up at Minu Karas's house with Franny and with Gohar and with her brother.
And how long did you stay with us at that point, Ushi?
Well, we stayed. I think we slept. I don't know if we slept in the house or did we sleep in the.
I think you slept in your van, but you know
Yes.
you were
Yes.
using us as well.
Right.
Some-
Well, we stayed there for a little while, maybe a week or two, and
Right.
then we went to Lahore. Well,
Yes.
we went to Afghanistan, and we sold the VW bus in Afghanistan,
Mhm.
and we rented a house in Lahore.
Mhm.
And Baba said, November. So we were going to stay there from January until November in our house in Lahore.
Mhm.
And we did that. We stayed there, and things kind of sort of went off the rails. I don't know, how much I want to get into all of that, but to make a long story short, the three of us started smoking dope again in Lahore while waiting to see Baba.
Mhm.
And we would write to him and tell him, oh, Baba, we disobeyed you. And he would write back, and he was so unbelievable. He would say, after such great work you've done for me, can you imagine? And how much he forgives us and how much he loves us. And it was just amazing. But then he postponed the coming into India until the 1st of January.
Mhm.
And so now we've got almost another year sitting in Lahore. And Mik's brother Tom went back to the United States. He had himself repatriated. Robert said, I'm going to Europe. I'm going to come back when it gets closer to January. And Robert left to go to Europe, and Mik and I were in Lahore with the dog.
Mhm.
And then we got sick, and we got
That's-
hepatitis. And Mik got hepatitis so bad that he was in the Muhammad Ali Jinnah Hospital in Lahore.
Mm.
And his roommate was another man with hepatitis. He was one of the sons of Papa Doc of Haiti, the strong man of Haiti.
Mm.
He had a bunch of sons, and one of his sons was in Mik's room, also with hepatitis. And I also had hepatitis, but not nearly as bad as Mik. And Robert, somehow, how he wrote to us or whatever, he had hepatitis in Istanbul, and Tom had hepatitis in America. So all of us had got hepatitis and were quite ill. And in the middle of all this, we get a form letter from Adi that says Meher Baba no longer entertains any personal correspondence.
Mm.
And he also had written to us and said, postponed our coming back into India indefinitely. So we were in Lahore. We were sick. We could no longer write to him, which was something that had never happened from the beginning. We always wrote to him and got answers back. We were like totally lost out there. And Mik got so sick when he was in the hospital that I did not know what to do. He was so ill. He weighed 87 pounds.
Mhm.
And I got him in a wheelchair out of the hospital to the airport, got him on a flight to Karachi, and dumped him on Minu Karas, as you well know. Yeah.
Yes.
And Minu put us up, and And Minu sat by Mik's bed, and I'm convinced Minu healed him.
Oh,
I'm convinced of that. And so then we were there. Baba was no longer.
uh-oh, she faded out again. Oh no. She's having some issues, I guess. Yeah, I well remember that time. Maybe she'll log back in. Yeah, Mik came in very, very sick from Lahore, and my father took over and basically nursed him back to health. It took a while. And then I think our whole group got together and collected funds for them to finally return back home to the West.
Yeah, am I back?
Yes,
Yes.
you're back now. So I was filling in for you, Ushi. I said to
Yes,
that.
yes, I could hear that. And it's just amazing because Adi Dubash and Rhoda and I think Adi Ajani may have been part of it, and
Yes.
Minu and your family, and you collected money for us to fly back to Europe from
I
Karachi.
remember. Yeah.
And we flew back from Karachi to Europe. We spent some time in Germany, even though I had to go in and they questioned me about this old drug thing and stuff. But we stayed a while in Frankfurt, and then we went to the United States. And the next time we were able to go to India was the 69 Darshan. But when Baba did say, Adi did say that when you change your address to send change of address to him. So as we were going back to Frankfurt, we wrote to Adi and we said, now we're in Frankfurt and we would like to write to Baba if we want to tell him some things, and can we? And Adi gave us permission. Baba gave us permission to write to him, and we wrote this letter to him in which we put everything that we could possibly muster that we had ever done, but never told him or not told him, and that we had continued to smoke dope before we got sick in Lahore. And he wrote back, and he answered every single point. And it was just amazing, really. So then,
okay.
yeah.
Ushi, we have a few people with questions. Can they ask you some questions?
Of course.
Yeah. So Rich, go ahead. You're up first.
How do you like to be called? I want to call you Ushi because I read
It's
Mik's book.
fine. Absolutely.
That makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
I've known her as Ushi. Yeah.
Ushi is short for Ursula, like Bob and Robert or Bill and William. Ushi and Ula are both ways to shorten Ursula.
Yeah. For the longest time, I never knew her real name was Ursula. I always knew her as Ushi.
Right. Yeah. And
I wanted to.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, when you were talking, and you almost finished the story before. In Mik's book, I thought I read where he also, when you went back to New York and met Fred and Ella and Robert, I thought he said he visited Dr. Kenmore.
Yes, he did.
And then later on, he said he thought that's why he became a chiropractor.
Absolutely, yes. It was interesting because, we didn't know any of these Baba people. And when we got to New York, we called Fred and Ella Winterfeld, and they said, come to the Monday night meeting. So we went to the Monday night meeting, and John Bass, who was this heavy-duty dude, stood at the door of the meeting room, and he said, well, who are you? You can't just come in here, because we looked like freaks, and there were no young Baba people in those days. They were all these old guard. And we said, well, Mik said, well, we just came from Ahmednagar. And he said, oh, do come in, do come in. And there were these two old ladies sitting there. And one said to me, how long did you stay with Baba? And I said, oh, 5-10 minutes. And she looked at the other one. She said, ha, 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 did you hear that? We must have really loved him. 5 minutes, unbelievable. I mean, these people, they were so old and so strange. So anyway, then we get this call from Anna Rosa Karash, who we also didn't know. We didn't know anybody except for Fred Neller. And she said that Baba had written to them, to Kenmore and Anna Rosa, to meet us. And she was totally annoyed. She said, this is not how this is supposed to work. We had to call around and try to find you. And Baba should have told you to come and meet Dr. Kenmore instead of the other way around. I mean, I didn't know. Yeah, okay, whatever, sorry. So we went there and we went into the room. First we met Anna Rosa, and she then told us how this was not the real deal here. We should have, Baba should have done it the other way around. Then we went into this room, and the guy said, Kenmore stood there and he said, what do you look like? And I didn't understand. Mik said, excuse me. And he said, well, you look like one of those goddamn hippies with long hair and a beard and all. And Mik said, as a matter of fact, we do. Poor guy. But it was so interesting. We'd never heard of chiropractic, and he was blind, but he had these charts on the walls and he explained it to us. And the part that was most moving was, he said, well, I can't see, and he didn't speak, but he said that Baba allowed him to palpate his face, and he described to us what it was like to feel Baba's face, and it was really moving. It was really moving. And that was the only time we had any experience with Kenmore, but I'm certain that's what then Mik became a chiropractor, and Ed and a bunch of Baba people, so many Baba people became chiropractors. I think that was the key at that time. Anyone else?
Anyone else have any questions for Uschi? We have a couple from Germany, Sabine
Really?
and husband.
Really? Where?
Yeah.
Who? What?
Right there. She's
Oh,
waiting.
Frühling.
Sabine, say hello to Uschi.
Sind Sie in Deutschland?
Guten Morgen, Uschi. Ja,
Hallo, guten Morgen.
Ach,
10 nach 5. Extra
oh
für dich
mein
aufgestanden.
Gott. Ja, und wo sind Sie?
In Bielefeld.
Bielefeld.
Oben im Norden.
Ja, ich bin aus Frankfurt.
Ja,
Oh,
ja.
welcome. Schön.
Yeah. Thank
Sehr
you.
gut. Ja.
Sabine and her husband are relatively new Baba lovers, right, Sabine? How long have you?
Oh, well, we have known of Baba for about 20 years.
Okay.
But we really sort of opened to Baba beginning of 2020.
Aha.
Okay.
Sind Sie nach Indien gegangen?
Ja,
Ja, wir waren letztes Jahr im November.
Ah, ja.
Waren wir
vor
in
einem
Indien.
Jahr,
Ja.
genau.
Schön.
Ja,
Ja,
wundervoll.
mit Covid war das ja alles ein Problem, ne?
Ja, jetzt wird es schwieriger. Wir sind froh, dass wir damals noch gegangen sind, oder als man noch überall rumwandern konnte. Und
Ja,
jetzt darf man nicht mehr ins MSC.
das Politische ist alles ein Problem, ja.
Ja.
Leider.
Ja.
Hm.
Sind Sie
Aber-
ab und zu in Frankfurt?
Oh, schon ein paar Jahre nicht mehr. Vor Covid, meine Schwester wohnt in Frankfurt.
Okay.
Ja.
Von Zeit zu Zeit, ja, aber schon eine Zeit lang nicht mehr,
Hm.
leider.
Hm.
Ja,
Ja, vielleicht klappt es ja nochmal.
mhm. Ja, ich werde alt.
Alle.
Ja.
Ja.
Okay. And
Anyone
next
else?
we have
Good to
Tony.
meet you.
I'm sorry.
I think he was saying nice to meet you.
Oh, ja. Danke.
And Tony has a question.
Hi, it's not really a question, Ushi. I just want to say hi. I feel like I know you for many years of running in the same circles on Facebook.
Yes,
But,
yes.
I really, really enjoyed. I've heard parts of the story before, but I really, really enjoyed it tonight. And thank you.
Well, I'm sorry that, you know, it's so difficult for me to just talk to my computer. So this isn't the.
Oh, you're doing a wonderful job. Don't worry about that.
There
We're-
are talks that I've given at other Baba centers where there were people in front of me on YouTube, and some are actually quite good, I think, actually. They're much more in detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're constricted with time and such. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you can't see us well because we can see you.
I can see you, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There you are.
Okay. Okay. And next we have Marion.
Hello, my name's Marion Lewis. I'm in New York City,
Hi.
and I've never heard any of your talks, so there are not enough words in my vocabulary to give you my appreciation because as you spoke, I felt I was with you and there and traveling with you. So there's a lot of grace in that. For
you.
I live alone and I'm quite elderly now, and so my life has changed a lot from younger years. So I want to just know that in that connection that I have with you, that how much grace that I've experienced tonight, and I thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. Yes, I feel I have to share my meeting, of course, with Baba because there's so few people our age now that have met him. And so, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
And now we have Rosalie. Go ahead, Rosalie.
Hi, Rosalie.
Jai Baba Ushi.
Baba, my goodness, we go way
It's good to see you. I don't like Zooming either, but that's welcome to the 21st century or whatever century. It's not very charming, but it's so good to see you because I always think of Phyllis and I love your story. I've heard it before. It's a great story, especially now that, you know, our country's kind of okaying grass and, you know, all this thing going on. And I thought, that's all we need is for our country to go down fast, you know, to okay smoking. I mean, we're a mess already, you know.
I know.
Anyway, do you remember, I brought a picture of the ancient Lambaba, and I came into this little bar that in Berkeley where Boss Skaggs would play.
Oh, yes.
And I set it, you know, the bar, and it had a lit candle, and I set the picture there. And he liked me, but after it was over and everything, he says, Rosalie, never do that again. And apparently then when I happened to mention it to you, you had met him in India.
Yeah, well, what happened is when we lived in Lahore and we waited to see Baba again and to go to India again and to turn people off of drugs. This house in a part of Lahore, Ichra, the house was on the Ferozpur Road, which is the one road that goes to India from Pakistan. There's one border opening only. And our house was on just off that road. So anyone who went to India from Pakistan or came from India to Pakistan had to pass in front of our house practically. But Indians are not allowed to go to Pakistan. Pakistanis are not allowed to go to India. So the only people that went back and forth were Westerners, were these hippies, because people didn't go by road to India. People went by airplane or something. So the freaks and the hippies are the only ones that that kind of did that. The travelers, people who traveled by road, and we had this house and we invited people to stay with us. There were Robert had a room, Mik and I had a room. Then there was a veranda, and there was this one large room, and whoever wanted to stay there could stay there. And it was told to us that our house was known from London to Singapore, that people came there by the dozen. They came there. And apparently Boss Skaggs was one of them. There were so many people who came and stayed with us. But the mistake that we made was we decided that because we want to talk to them about drugs, and a lot of these people use drugs, that we did not permit them to use drugs at our house, that they could do that. So they all sat around smoking dope while Mik and I and Robert are preaching the Avatar. Yeah. I mean, bizarre. One day, the Pakistani secret police came, the CIA, whatever it is, of Pakistan, came to our house, and they said that we were following some Indian man. We were clearly spies, and they were going to investigate us. And Minu had given us all these pamphlets and things to pass out to these people that stayed with us. And so we loaded up the Pakistani secret police with all this Baba literature, and they never came back. But so many people stayed with us. And this is, by the way, how we kind of fell off the wagon, because the guys were all sitting around smoking dope. One day Robert looked at this guy and said, "Are you going to pass this?" And then he passed it to me, and and the rest is history. But the thing about Baba, the love in his letters, the forgiving us, and how wonderful we were, and how sweet, and it was just unbelievable, the love that he shared with us when we told him we were taking drugs again. I mean, we didn't we would smoke for 2 days and then write to him and stop and be all guilty, and then start again for a day and write to him and be all guilty like that. But the one thing that I also wanted to say, years later, I was in Australia and I was visiting with Francis Brabazon, and I used to sit with him at his little house there, and just the two of us. And we were talking, and at some point he said, "That was you? Those letters? That was you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm afraid so." And he looked at me so disgusted. It's like, "Oh my God, that was, those letters," he said. And it had never really occurred to me what was happening at Baba's end, when Baba was in strict seclusion. Mandali did everything possible to make him happy and to keep him well and to keep everything cool. And those letters kept coming. These assholes sitting in Pakistan smoking dope and writing, "Oh, beloved Baba, we are so bad. We disobeyed you again." And then he would write back, and Erich would have to write. Baba would dictate, now how he loves us and how he forgives us. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, yes.
Ushi, we have two more questions.
Okay,
One from
yes.
Paula. Go ahead, Paula.
Put my glasses on. Voice Paula. Oh, Paula, hi. You're muted.
You're muted, Paula.
Oh, okay. Hi. I just wanted to say hi and send love.
How is your granddaughter?
Oh, she's wonderful. She's going to turn, she's turning 6 in January. Yeah.
Paula and I have something in common. My son was born unbelievably premature. He was born at 26 weeks of gestation, 40 being term, and he weighed 1 pound 11 ounces. at birth, and Paula has a granddaughter who is about the same, maybe even
23
smaller.
weeks and 1 pound 4 ounces.
Yeah, he was 1 pound 11 ounces, so he was
Yeah.
his moose compared to you.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So Paula and I used to commiserate. I would tell her, "It's okay, it's okay. He's my son. 39 years old now."
Thank you so much. It's
Yeah.
so good to see you always.
Thank you. Yes.
Always. Much love, Jay Baba.
Is Eric there with you?
No, he's not.
No, because I haven't seen him in so long. Yeah.
Are you on
Will you
Facebook?
say one word about Phyllis Frederick? You were dear friends. I know that.
Oh, you loved Phyllis.
Yeah.
And Baba made that connection. Baba said, when you go to LA, meet Phyllis Frederick. And that was, you know, I mean, obviously, Phyllis said that because she didn't have any children, that Baba allowed her to meet children from her past life.
Oh,
A
wow.
lot of the Baba people were her children, she felt.
Wow.
And she had memories of that. And apparently
Wow.
she remembered my being her daughter at some point when a long time ago. So, you know.
Amazing. Ushi, we have Gail next. Gail?
It's not a question, it's a comment, Ursula. I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and there's no other way that I would have had personal experience with you except via Zoom. And I just want you to know that I certainly hadn't heard your story, and many of us on this Zoom knew in advance you're going to be telling your story. So thank you for being open-minded and going ahead and doing it, even though
Thank you. It's hard to get going, you know, in the beginning, but once I sort of got rolling, it became easier. Thank you.
Well, Baba does so, and I just wanted to say that it's been so very meaningful to hear your story and to know about your connection with Baba. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Goher did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, I know Ushi. Let me reach out to her. And she was kind to agree. So thank you.
Your father, it was interesting because we took our dog from Santa Barbara to Lahore.
Yeah.
Right? We flew the dog from New York to Frankfurt. We put the dog in the Volkswagen bus, and the dog's name was Sita, and the dog came along. And the idea was, when we go to see Baba, we will give him the dog as a present. Well, little did we know that Minu had Baba's order to write to him whatever is happening. So Minu ratted us out and wrote to Baba and said that when they come, they'll bring their dog. But we didn't know that. So the next letter from Baba was, and when you come, do not bring your dog. We're like, oh. So then we said, Minu, you did that. It was your fault. Minu then said, oh, that's not a problem. When you do go, you bring the dog and you tie her up outside the gate. And she will bark, and Baba will say, what's going on? We said, Baba, you told us not to bring the dog. She's out there outside the gate. And then he will say, oh, bring her in. But none of this, of course, happened. But
right. That was so typical of Dad.
yes, right.
So, do you remember?
We left her in Lahore, by the way. And with the Quaker couple. And when we got to Frankfurt, eventually, when we settled in Frankfurt for a while, they flew her from Lahore to Frankfurt.
Oh,
and
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we took her back to the United States. We took her to Berkeley, and she was stolen in Berkeley by by a neighbor who packed her up in his car and drove her off.
Oh, that's terrible. She was a lovely dog.
Yes, Sita.
I think Paula has another question.
Go here. Your dad was Minu?
Yes.
Minu Karas,
Minu Karas, my father.
Oh my God, I did not know that. Thank
Did you
you.
read his book? Did you read his book, Paula?
No.
Oh,
you
fantastic.
What is it called?
It's called The God Seeker.
The God Seeker. Oh, I'll
Yeah.
have to look into
Oh,
that.
yeah. Oh,
Share
very
your-
good.
So you can get it from Sherry.
Okay, The God Seeker. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, thank
Very,
you.
very good
That's
book.
diaries.
It is a great book, a great
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
Thank
Wow,
you.
thank you. The God Seeker. I'm going to write it down right when I get off here.
Yeah, it took
Yes.
many years to complete, but my father's diaries went back way back to the 30s, and Baba had told him to keep up the writing, and so he did. And then finally, with the help of Noshiwan in New Jersey, I got it published. So
Wow. Now, where do you live?
I live in South Florida.
Oh, in South Florida. Okay.
Yes, South Florida, right. Very
Wow.
small, very peaceful.
Yeah.
I believe Minu was one of Baba's circle of 120.
120, yes. My father was, Baba said, was one of his circle of 120 disciples that the Avatar always brings with him. So,
Wow.
Oh yeah, Minu is very special. Very, very special.
Was he
Oh.
the one who was he the one who was on the new Baba sent back to Pakistan, but he was on the New Life?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
He was,
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
And Baba took his staff.
yes,
Ah.
yeah, his cane, right.
Yeah.
Oh, how wonderful.
Mhm.
Mhm. Many,
And
many.
Rose,
Mhm.
oh,
Sorry?
I was just going to say, Rosalie, much love to you too, honey. I haven't seen you in so long.
All right. Well, it's getting a little late on the East Coast. It's almost 11:30. Anybody else have any further questions or comments for Ushi before
I
we
do. How's
Oh.
Toby? How's Toby? Ushi?
He's much better. He started limping a couple of weeks ago, and he's on anti-inflammatories, and he's much better. He's off. He's sleep someplace around here, which is good because otherwise he would
How old is he? How old is he?
almost 10.
Yeah.
The doctor thinks he has osteoarthritis in the shoulders, but he's definitely better.
Good.
So he's not limping anymore. Yes, if you are friends of mine on Facebook, Toby gets a lot of attention on Facebook.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think if everybody is happy, then we'll call it a night and we'll say, anyone else? Oh, Marion. Okay, go ahead.
Where do you live, Ursula?
In Walnut Creek, California, outside of San Francisco.
Oh, at Walnut Creek?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to see the light shining wherever you go, but I'll see it shining there. Thank you.
Yeah, I live in Walnut Creek.
Okay, thank you.
By myself with my dog Toby.
Okay, thank you.
Very nice. Okay, well, this has been a wonderful exchange, Ushi. Thank you so very much for coming and for enlightening us with all your Baba adventures. And we hope to see you soon again on Zoom. Yeah?
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
thank you, and Jai Baba. Jai beloved Baba.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so till next week, folks. Next week will be my last time hosting you in this temporary phase before I hand over the gavel back to Jeff when he comes back. I believe. Has anybody heard from him? I haven't heard a peep. I sent him an email a while ago, but I haven't heard. So maybe he doesn't have connection from where he is in Mehrabad. But I think he said he was coming back on the 12th. But anyway, next week, I have a very special guest, a new one that you all have not even heard of, I'm sure. She's from Australia, and she has a wonderful story about intuition and how intuition brought her to Baba. It's an absolutely fabulous story. I was blown away when I read her book, and I'll tell you more about it in my next letter to you next week, and look forward to hosting her next Sunday. So she's a world-renowned journalist from Australia. Yeah. All right. So with that, Jai Baba, and thank you.
Jai
all.
Baba.
Hey, Baba. Hey, Baba.
Thank you, Goher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ursula.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be well in Baba's love.
Thank you, Jai Baba.
Okay, Jai Baba.
Yes, we're going.
Thank you.